Thank you to everyone for joining us on this, our third webinar in the impact of COVID-19 on individual giving series. We've got over 200 people registered to attend the event today, so we're really thrilled about that, and 85 charities representing. A very big special thank you to our panelists today for volunteering their time to share their experiences. We are really pleased that Helen Dorr has joined us again. Helen is Head of Data Strategy and Insights at Woodsville Data, and has been tracking the impact of COVID-19 on individual giving since I think we started the series in May, so February through to May, and then we did another one in October, and this is now our third one in December, looking up to, sorry, second one in August, and we're looking today up to October. We're thrilled to have Alex McDowell join us. Alex is Head of Public Fundraising at RNIB, and he'll be talking to us about the new approaches RNIB have introduced as a result of the pandemic restrictions. And we're really pleased to have Guy Upward back with us. Guy joined us in August to talk through the experiences of the pandemic so far and the impact of that on the Royal British Legion. And he's agreed to come back to speak to us about the Poppy Appeal and how the new approaches he introduced as part of the Poppy Appeal have performed up to this date. So also, you may see Emma Corbett on screen. Emma is our sales director at Woods, and she's in the background just to make sure everything runs smoothly. And if I drop out, Emma will take over. So we're really pleased to have Emma there just as our backstop. If you do want to know any more about Woodsville Data and the kinds of work that we do, drop Emma a line. Emma's email address is emma.corbett@woodsvilledata.co.uk. So Emma's there as well. I'm Helen Hallahan. I'm Head of Marketing at Woodsville Data. I'm the host today for this webinar and hopefully take you through the next hour of insights and information. And we really hope that this webinar will be useful for you to see how campaigns have been performing over the last 10 months and what innovations and changes have been introduced by charities as a result of the pandemic restrictions. A little bit of housekeeping before we do kick off. Just to let you know, in the panel at the bottom of your screens, there's a chat function. Please feel free to use it to chat to one another and start discussions amongst yourself. We've got 94 people so far in today, and hopefully that will write 91 already. Sorry, 96 already. At the end of the webinar, we'll be holding a Q&A. There is a Q&A function at the bottom of the screen. Please do use that Q&A function to ask a question to all the panelists, or if you want to ask a specific question to one of the panelists, please use that function and pop their name in as well. And we'll try to answer as many questions as we can at the end of the session. If we don't have enough time, then potentially we will email out some answers to you. We'll be doing some live polls as a part of the session for you to vote on. You'll see those come up on your screen and you'll be able to vote on those live, and we'll see the results of everybody's response. We are recording the webinar. That will be available on demand from tomorrow. And we are still new to webinars, so if there are any hitches, please bear with us. We'll try and keep things as smooth as possible. So without any more ado, let me introduce to you Helen Dorr, Head of Data Strategy and Insights at Woodsville Data. Helen works closely with our charities and account directors, and her role is to support your fundraising activities. She's delivering actionable insights and data strategy recommendations alongside wider charity benchmarking and trend analysis, such as that she's presenting today. She brings with her an experience of working with the charity fundraising sector and working on data and CRM planning and insight projects. Helen has compiled the following report, which will also be available after this webinar to download from our website. And don't forget, if you have any questions for Helen, send them through on the Q&A and we'll look to answer them at the end of the session. Helen, over to you.
Lovely, thank you. I'm just going to share my screen and get that going. There we go. Okay, here we go. Impact of COVID-19 individual giving, part 3. We have this picture in the report, and I thought it might be a good way to just summarise what the purpose is right now of this session today. So we wanted to explore whether the changes, the impact of the recession is catching up with us. Have things changed over the last 2 or 3 months? We are in part 3. I never thought we'd have a part 3, let alone a part 4, which we also need to do after Christmas and January to see how things pan out then. But yeah, when we started doing these, it was very much in response to our charities asking us questions, asking us for knowledge, for insights around how things were doing out in the marketplace. And that's not changed. That is still there. We are still being asked those questions, and there is still definitely a need for sharing of information, sharing of knowledge, sharing of experiences, and seeing how we're all coping with this, how we're adapting, what's working, what's not, and what we can take forward with us into our planning for 2021. So what are we finding? Going to start with cash campaigns. This follows a similar sort of trend to the previous presentations that we've done. So we'll have a look at cash, regular giving, and summarise our key thoughts. We wanted to do part 3 also because things are slightly different over the last few months. The weather has changed for a start, and also things are a lot harder out there. Recession, redundancies, wider economic impacts, back into lockdown, back out, tears, confusion, frustration, and difficulty negotiating our way towards the Christmas season. So we, apart from just kind of generally giving knowledge of how things are changing, we wanted to particularly look at more recent times to understand if there was a shift compared to what we've seen earlier on in the year. At the moment, all looking good. So cash campaigns, we've got on this table here, February through to April, and then Feb to July and Feb to October. So you can see the shift over time as we've built and added on data. Response versus forecast throughout, we've always been up, and we're at 28% up across the year now, with up to the end of October. Response versus 2019 on our, what we call our business as usual, just the normal cash campaigns that go out the door. So not emergency appeals in that sense. So we're just comparing this year to last year, like for like. We saw quite a static response at first, going up to a 12% uplift when we reviewed it in July, and we're now seeing a 15% uplift on response rates versus 2019. And then if we take a look at the average gift, again, we're seeing an 11% uplift across the year now. So we saw a real big hike over the summer, which has kind of come back down a little bit now. So we'll have a look at that in a minute and give you a bit more of a sense of how that's doing. But as you can see, cash campaigns as a whole, still going great guns, thank goodness. So to hone in a little bit, these are our response rates and average gifts from Feb through to October. You can see there from a 9.5% average up to a 10.9% average this year. And then last year, £20.42 average gift up to £22.59 this year. So again, both of them up against last year, wonderful. Christmas campaigns at the moment, just to cover those off as we go through, the data set here is up until the end of October. So Christmas was starting to go out through the doors, but hasn't been included in all of these results because we're still processing. But to give you a sense of how they're doing, they are just going great guns. We are so busy processing and post-opening still within our response handling teams because we are just outstripping forecasted responses. We budget and then we update our forecasts 2 or 3 weeks before we expect responses to come in, and then actuals obviously happen, and we are just so busy. Everything is smashing forecasts pretty much across the board. So I'm expecting some really, really good and interesting results to be able to play back to you at the beginning of next year. But for reassurance purposes, what we're seeing up until the end of October is definitely carrying through into the Christmas campaigns. We wanted to, this time, as I touched on, kind of just focus a little bit more on the more recent months rather than just the picture as a whole, because things are quite different. We can see in the charity press, you know, things are still really hard. Resource needs are higher. money coming in is still lower. There's a real push on the government for support. You know, things are tough. There are redundancies, there are recessions and economic impact. So we were really conscious to see, was there something changing in more recent months as we kind of came out of the sort of probably a bit more a high of the summer into the sort of reality that things weren't changing that fast. And you can see here on response rates, actually, no, they're still 18% higher in the same time frame as they were last year, which is great. Responses are still, going great guns, no different to what we saw earlier on in the year. The one thing where there is maybe just a slight difference compared to what we saw, particularly in the summer, was around the average gift. So we can see last year it was £19.50 between August and October, still at £20 in the same time frame, so still very strong, and actually a little bit up. However, compared to the summer, less so. It's much more in line with last year, and that's probably maybe slightly, people are starting to be a bit more considered. Maybe getting back to sort of normal giving levels a little bit more, or actually they're just being a bit more impacted by the world around them and the tougher economic climate, and they're just not able to give as much perhaps now. I think as well, we can kind of see that in some of the other reports that are out there in the marketplace at the moment. I think that's quite a typical picture. Responses still super high, people are giving, but there may be giving more widely, sharing it around a bit, or just being a bit more considered in their giving. I think the gift is where we might see slightly more of an impact over time. Wanted to track, as always, the amount of responses coming in online and whether there was any changes there. Obviously, a lot of the responses that we deal with in a response to a cash campaign will be postal. So that's still very much the large percentage here. But you can see our website responses are 2.4% in 2020 versus 1.4% last year. This is across Feb to October. So you can see that that upward trend in online responses is still going. We're at sort of nearly 71% versus last year, which is up again on what we saw in July, where it was at 50%. So those increases and that trend is still happening, which again, it's not a surprise. It reflects what's happening out there in the wider charity world. We're becoming much more multi-channel, virtual fundraising, virtual events, and digital fundraising are pushing forward great guns. So I think that will just be a trend that continues, and we'll be doing more and more with that as time goes by. Just to hone in on the charity types, to update you on those. This is Feb to October with our charity types there. And you can see the health and human services are still higher on response rate than they were last year. Animal and international, less so. It's the same picture that we saw in the summer. Not much change there, and similar picture with the average gifts as well. I think, people can see the world around them being impacted. So I think naturally are kind of keen to help the things that they can see that they know they can help and want to help perhaps a little more this year. It might be though that the average gift kind of dropping down a bit more is that people are starting to give back to their normal charities that they used to support, as well as still supporting maybe the health and human services charities a bit more. This is the August to October view of charity types. So just honing in, we didn't have many animal charity campaigns going in that time frame, so they're not in this graph. So we can just see the health, human services and international here, but it sort of reflects the earlier graph really, where you've got those increases in response rate compared to last year for health and human services and a drop down for international. The average gift for international, however, is still very, very strong, and actually a bit higher again in the August to October than it was in the summer. Just to cover off emergency appeals, we don't have them in here because there weren't very many running, I don't think hitting actually within this time frame. So we saw a big raft of them earlier on in the spring and early summer in response to the pandemic going live, and the need to try and offset some of the losses, particularly in sort of face-to-face fundraising that we were seeing. So emergency appeals aren't relevant for us to report on within this timeframe. However, we have seen a kind of resurgence of some emergency appeals where charities are struggling, need a bit of help, and they have launched them over the last couple of months. So again, we'll be adding that into our next report to give you an update on how those have performed over Christmas. But again, kind of anecdotally, from what we can see within our day-to-day reporting, they're doing really well and definitely outstripping again forecasted numbers. So again, yes, and an area that is still holding fast and that we we can turn to if we need to. To move on to regular giving, direct debit cancellation rates are down 50% year on year. Similar picture to what we saw in the summer. You can see on the left there, last year our cancellation rate was at 20%, down to 10%. And if you look at the one on the right, you can see that spike that we had in March dropping down to a kind of fairly steady rate ever since. Basically a bit of a sort of knee-jerk reaction in March, I think, to the pandemic. But since then, things have just steadied right off. And largely following, as we saw last time, acquisitions. So the blue line is the percentage of new coming in. You can see there that dropped right down throughout March and April, particularly with face-to-face stopping. And then as we moved into June and July, that blue line goes back up. We are seeing new people coming back in. Digital and DRTV are quite key there, as well as a bit of face-to-face getting going again. But a lot of budgets we found was kind of moved away from face-to-face that wasn't possible into channels like digital and DRTV. So you can see people starting to get going again, acquiring new supporters, and the cancellation rate that had dipped down following the dip in acquisition just starting to come back up again in August and September off the back of that activity. Fortunately, you can see acquisition has had to slow again in September, October, going back into lockdown, etc. And I would imagine some of the DRTV slots that were quite cheap at the beginning of the year no longer potentially being available or at the same rates has probably had an impact there as well. But on the whole, regular giving pretty steady and just following in line with acquisition. So nothing extra going on that we need to be worried about that we can see. Okay, so to start bringing these things together, looking back at 2020, key points there. A national crisis unites people in giving and supporting others, thank goodness. How wonderful is that? And people still give as long as we ask. So keep on asking, even when their outlook is uncertain. You know, it's so wonderful to see things so busy right now. It could very easily have dropped right off. And I was expecting, preparing this report, to see things looking a little bit more different. But no, it's all good. Everything is carrying on and people still want to give, they still want to help. A key thing that I think we'll need to take through with us to next year is a sort of move towards omni-channel approaches. And we'll need to analyse and understand and test and learn around that. We're moving into different channels, moving budgets around, having to do things differently because we can't do things the way we used to, which is brilliant. We are moving forward, we're being agile, we're being flexible, we're learning new things, but it means we'll have potentially different audiences and different types of supporters on our base. We don't quite know what they're going to do. Is it just because of the pandemic that they're doing what they're doing, or will they stay? Will they have the same attrition rates as other channels, or will they not? So we'll have to be tracking and learning, testing ways of how to talk to them, trying to understand who they are and how best to communicate with them, what channel, what message, what content, etc. There'll be a lot for us to learn as we move into next year and develop from, which is exciting, as well as, lots of work. And it's definitely something that I know we're going to be doing more of next year. So yeah, we'll keep you posted on that. And then finally, of course, retaining existing donors. In the current marketplace, acquisition is hard. Things are uncertain. So loving and keeping our donors on board is a key one for us. And our key actions, just to summarise there, keep asking, of course, but to plan across channels, not within them. Think about how people are coming on board to you, what you're doing differently, and how that might affect the audiences that you've got. Try to understand them, think about who they are, what's different, what they're going to respond to. And in particular, sort of mentioned there, geographies. Different parts of the country are having quite different experiences at the moment. So that might be something that we need to think about as we communicate with them. Local supporters, they're being fabulous to us in these difficult times, despite a lot of uncertainty and a lot of frustration and grumpiness. So the fact that they are still giving is wonderful, and we should thank them for that. And then, of course, staying agile. Things are changing fast, they keep changing, and we need to keep changing to move with it, but analysing, learning, and taking those learnings with us. There we go. Thank you very much. I hope that was useful. As Helen said, the report will be available, and if you have any questions, please do get in touch.
Thank you so much, Helen. That's really great to hear all of that. It's positive to see that response and gift are continuing to stay strong, especially compared to 2019 in cash appeals, and that regular giving is tracking quite steadily in a steady way and not spiking because of the lockdowns that we're seeing. Really looking forward to seeing the updated results in the new year. I'm going to do a quick poll now with the people that are on the call. I'm going to launch the poll, and hopefully you'll see that on your screens. So the question is, which channel has delivered most individual giving fundraising income this year so far for your charity? And we've got a number of options there. We've got direct mail, we've got DRTV, email, face-to-face, individual supporter initiatives, social media, telemarketing, and websites, so people going direct to your website to give. And I'll just give you a minute to look through those options. There's also an other option as well, if that's one that you want to make, and see how we're looking as a group. So those options again were direct mail, DRTV, email, face-to-face, individual supporter initiatives, social media, telemarketing, direct to your website, and other. That's which channel has delivered the most individual giving fundraising income this year so far for your charity. Okay, if you want to make your choices, I'll end the poll in just a few more seconds. Okay, I'm going to end it there. And let's see what everybody said here. So 55% of the people that voted there have chosen direct mail, which reinforces some of what Helen's been saying, that direct mail really has been performing in those cash campaigns that we've been seeing through Woodsvale data. But also coming in there, social media and direct to websites, so that digital side of things really growing in the way that people are responding. So we've got 11% there and 14% respectively. DRTV 3%, email 5%, face-to-face 4%. Obviously there's been lots of issues around access and restrictions around face-to-face, with that coming more to the fore again in September. People introducing that more. Individual supporter initiatives at 4%. I mean, that really does show that the general public have been getting behind the charities that they support. And we've got telemarketing at 3% there. So thank you everybody for taking part in that. I hope you found that interesting. Am I sharing those results? I wasn't sharing them, was I? There we go, I'm sharing them now. Hopefully everybody can see those. Apologies. So direct mail 55%, DRTV 3%, email 5%, face-to-face 4%, and then coming down, individual supporter initiatives, social media at 11%, telemarketing 3%, and direct to website 14%. Okay. So we're moving on now. We're going to hear from Alex McDowell, who is Head of Public Fundraising at RNIB. Alex has a role that oversees all of the charity's individual giving, legacy, challenge event and community giving activities, as well as leading the fundraising innovation team. He's been a fundraiser for more than 20 years and has previously led the legacy and tribute team at the NSPCC, served as head of fundraising at the Shakespeare Hospice, and had various other roles in individual giving and community fundraising. If you have any questions for Alex, please use the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen and send them through, and we'll look to answer those at the end of the session. And we're really excited to hear about the innovations RNIB have been exploring over the last 9 months. So Alex, over to you.
Thanks, Helen, and hello everyone. Good morning. So yeah, thank you for this opportunity to share our story. And that was the way it was kind of pitched to me. Would I like to share RNIB's story over the last 9 months or so? And I guess our story is actually framed in terms of how we've been trying to communicate RNIB's story to our supporters. And that's kind of been underpinning pretty much our entire response to what's been happening. So, take us all back, and we were probably all there, got the scars, got the painful memories, but, it's late March, and we can see what's happening in external environment, and our financial year runs April to March, and we've got all these wonderful plans, business plans, targets, etc. And effectively, the rug is ripped right from underneath that. We're not going to be able to do face-to-face. London Marathon's off. We can't do our legacy event program. Any kind of challenge events is going to be really, really difficult, etc., etc. So, what we had to do very quickly, like so many of the people on this call, was, well, what's the best approach to this to safeguard short-term, medium-term, and long-term? What is absolutely credible as a story that we're telling, so that we're not being alarmist or disingenuous with our supporters and customers? And how can we do this in whatever options we come up with, in a way which is still completely consistent with the essence of our existing strategy, so that we're not being completely reactive, we're still doing things in a way which we were hoping to achieve. So our key strategic underlying aims across our current period is, greater strategic alignment with the rest of the organisation, so that we are amplifying brand and social change messages rather than raising money in a way that actually undermines the attitude change we're looking for in the wider public. Completely making sure that we are being as relevant as we can to both our existing supporters and their changing needs, but also being relevant to the customers who we currently don't attract, and understanding why not. So making sure our offers and propositions are being relevant to them. And for us personally, we are hugely reliant on legacy and individual giving income. So making sure that we're still diversifying our portfolio, whether that's products and propositions or whether it's channels within existing programs. So they were sort of our underlying, how can we be credible? How can we tell our story in a really transparent way? How can we continue to treat our supporters and donors as partners? And that was really important to us. And from a financial point of view, I'd love to say that we had some wonderful, highly algorithmically worked out targets for a lot of our urgent activity, but our first and kind of primary concern was to say, well, how do we offset the losses we're expecting to get by not being able to do challenge events, by not being able to do community activity, by not being able to do face-to-face acquisition? So there was a little bit of a how do we mitigate risk element to it, and then build from there on, and how can we use this, ever being the kind of glass half full kind of team that we are, to say, well, are there opportunities in this? How can this help us accelerate some of the changes we wanted to make, we needed to make? How can this make us look afresh at our program and go, what, even before this, we were looking at making some changes. Does this accelerate some of the things we're thinking about anyway? So that was our approach. Now, I touched on, in terms of what we did, I touched on sort of the credibility. And some people might think this is just nuance and this is just linguistics, but we were really, really keen to make sure that the appeals we put out in response to coronavirus were absolutely relevant to the actual work we were undertaking as an organisation. What we didn't want to do is pull the emergency appeal klaxon in a way that was disingenuous or wasn't truthful. So it was entirely credible to say that we were receiving significantly more calls to our helpline from blind and partially sighted people, and particularly around the issues of not being able to get access to food, not being able to get access to medicine, scared about being able to go out because of social distancing, very, very difficult if you've got a visual impairment. So we wanted to make sure that people were aware that we were worried about the financial situation. We weren't able to fundraise in the way we would normally, and we were seeing increased demand. So there is a truthful need to be able to go out and say, we know you support us, we know you're passionate about what we do, we've got some challenges, will you help us? But not in a way that was falsely claiming that this is life and death for the organisation, because we were able to mitigate a lot of those risks. And this at this point in time, it wouldn't have been honest to say, without your gift, we're going to have to stop services. There was a risk that we wouldn't meet demand, and we're seeing increasing demand, and we're keen to tell that story and about why we're seeing extra demand, and treat our donors very much as partners who were trusted allies in helping us meet that increased demand, rather than pull that emergency klaxon. So that kind of underpinned it. And once we had that starting point and our overall view that we just wanted to keep supporters informed, actually a lot of our activity flowed from there. So what did we do? Well, actually, Helen D, you talked about sort of BAU campaigns. Effectively, we haven't had any BAU campaigns. What we've tried to do is, there might be scheduled BAU, but we've tried to maintain a consistent narrative with our supporters right through the year, starting with what was our urgent appeal and talk about the increased demand on our services and our limited ability to fundraise. And we did do an urgent appeal, but what we've largely done is repurpose existing activity, but just continue to tell the slightly evolving story of how our year is going. So in our April campaign, you know, when we're talking to supporters who are raffle players, for example, we're saying, look, we know that you might not be able to go out and sell raffle tickets. We totally understand that. Would it be easier for you to make a cash donation at this point? Would you prefer to use e-tickets, something you might not have done before, but it's a lot easier than you might imagine? So it was providing solutions for our supporters, not making assumptions that they couldn't give, but also being really mindful that they might be finding it more difficult to give for a whole load of reasons, whether they're economic, emotional, and challenging on a practical level. But also through all this, and the alignment the rest of with our organisation is seeing this as an opportunity to add value to our supporters, because, you know, for too long, and this is being very candid about our own organisation, there's been a bit of a schism between customers, those are people who benefit from our services, and donors, and there is obviously an overlap between them. But trying to blur those lines, and as far as saying, actually, are there things as a donor in that kind of bucket, if you like, that are the services we're offering that might be relevant to you and to your loved ones, and letting them know about the stuff we're doing to make life better for blind and partially sighted people and with those customers, and vice versa. Really start that engagement with my colleagues in services to say, look, you know, can we be really honest with our customers, and give them an opportunity to contribute at this time, without the prejudice that they may not be able to, but again, making no assumptions that they can. So can we use all of our channels, all of our touch points with both service users and customers of our shop, for example, and let them know about the urgent appeal, so it really feels like an RNIB response rather than just a fundraising response. And again, that's absolutely part of our strategy already, but it allowed us to accelerate that, provide better value across the board, reinforce organizational messages, brand messages about what our purpose is, who we are and what we do, and you know, really see this as an advantage. So you know, I'd be completely making it up and lying if you were going to be less kind to say this hasn't been challenging, and we wouldn't have rather, you know, we're glad coronavirus has happened, but it has helped us to actually challenge some of those internal ways of working. It has allowed us to accelerate some of our innovations. As you said, there's been more urgency behind the need to think differently about how we do fundraising in general, about the transition away, or at least the less reliance on face-to-face activity, testing out both new creatives and new channels, and new products and our innovation. Again, this is all stuff that was in train already, but there's been more focus, more urgency, and more priority given to that, which has been actually quite helpful, while also allowing us just to be really transparent as best we can with our supporters about the work we are doing, what we've not been able to do, and how their gifts have really made a difference. So one final point, because I'm keeping a vague eye on time and the brief I've been given. I haven't had a Helen waving at me yet saying stop talking. But you know, I was really interested, Helen D, in terms of when you talk about the stewardship and loving supporters. And you know, really interesting opportunity came to us the other day, and we genuinely don't know how we're going to proceed with this, but for some Gift in Kind media space in the new year. And you know, just to share kind of where we're at, you know, do we make this an appeal, or actually is this just a really great opportunity to say thank you to everyone who has contributed, talk about the impact of that contribution. Of course, that is a fundraising ask indirectly, and we'll say you can still contribute, you know, our work isn't done, etc. But really making sure that we are continuing to tell that story and letting people know their gifts have made difference, and retain that sense of shared purpose, because otherwise I think all of us, but my personal view is I'm not that surprised in some way that people have responded really generously, because people are great. I'm also not surprised because if you look at our products and our supporters, they're probably less affected by loss of jobs. And also, if I look at the fact that a lot of people at this point in time, because of furlough and because of not commuting, probably have a bit more disposable income. I think for all of us, the concerns are more about what happens next year and the year beyond. And therefore, what we do this year, the way we communicate, the way we show value for money, the way we treat our supporters actually is as important for what results we get next year, the year after, and maintaining that good relationship as it is actually about bringing the money in this year. So for all of it is about that respect for the supporters and that long-term and the stewardship being as important as the actual cash we generate. So hopefully that's a whistle-stop tour through our kind of 9-month story where we've got to. But you know, if someone had said to me in March, you know, our performance through the end of individual giving performance, I should say, through the end of, you know, November would be where it was, I would have bitten the hands off. So we're certainly not triumphant. We certainly have taken some knocks, and we certainly wish things were different. But I think overall the approach has certainly probably been as good as we could have hoped it would have been at that point in March.
Thank you so much for telling that story, Alex, and sharing with us how things have gone with RNIB this year. It's really interesting to hear how the pandemic has accelerated that unity within RNIB, and they're coming together to utilise all channels and really speak to everybody together, rather than just have a fundraising channel and then the services and the customer channels as well. So I think it's a great outcome, and as you say, wish things were different, but as a result, it's really heartening to hear that things have gone well, from the innovations and the changes and the overcoming the obstacles that you have done. Thank you.
No worries. Still a work in progress.
Yeah, still going. So taking those into 2021 as well. If anyone has any questions for Alex, please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen to pop some questions through, and we'll look to get those answered at the end of the session. I've got another quick poll for you now. I hope. Here we go. So launching this one. Have you tried any new individual giving fundraising initiatives throughout 2020 as a result of the pandemic restrictions, in the same way that Alex has come together with the rest of his organisation, or have you tried any new channels? And if yes, have they met your expectations? So have they become below your expectation, as per your expectation? Have they performed above your expectation, or really well above and exceeded all expectations there? So those questions again. Have you tried new individual giving fundraising initiatives throughout 2020 as a result of the pandemic? And if yes, how did they meet your forecast expectations? Were they below, as expectation, above, or well above? So I'll just give you a few more seconds, 10 more seconds to make your choices there. Okay, I'm going to end the polling. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thank you for participating. I'm going to end that there, and I will remember to share the results this time so you can see what people have said. I think overwhelmingly and unsurprisingly, 96% of those people that voted in that poll have tried new individual giving fundraising initiatives, and 4% haven't. And we know that there have been challenges for lots of charities around trying new things and ways that they can do that. But those that have tried new fundraising initiatives in individual giving, 38% have performed above expectation, those new initiatives, 30% as expectation, 17% well above expectation, and 15% below expectation. So I think you can see there that kind of as expectation or above, when we're trying new things in individual giving fundraising, are actually performing as or above expectations. So I think that's something we can take forward into 2021 and say, you know, let's continue to try new things. Let's continue to change things up a little bit. Okay, hopefully that was interesting. We're moving now on to speak to Guy. Hi, Guy. Guy is the Assistant Director of Fundraising at the Royal British Legion. He's worked within marketing and fundraising for a number of years, firstly for direct marketing agencies, and then he moved over to the charity sector more than 16 years ago. After stints at Oxfam and Livability, Guy joined the Royal British Legion and now heads up the individual giving team. He heads up about 35 fundraisers at the Legion, comprising of legacies, supporter acquisition and supporter development, and is responsible for a gross income of around £45 million. If you have any questions for Guy, please don't forget to send them through using the Q&A function. Guy, as I said, joined us for our webinar in August, where he spoke about some of the things that RBL have encountered during the pandemic. And he said he'd come back and share with us how the Poppy Appeal had gone given the COVID conditions, and let us know what changes from 2020 the Royal British Legion will be carrying over into 2021. So we're really excited to hear from you, Guy. Thank you.
Thanks, Helen. No pressure there, thank you. Right, let me just share this. Is that okay, Helen? Can you all see that? Right, okay, good stuff. Morning, everybody. Thank you for inviting me along. I'm one of 4 assistant directors of fundraising at the Legion. And as Helen said, I'm just going to be talking to you about Poppy Appeal today. I'm not actually responsible for Poppy Appeal. It's one of my colleagues, a fantastic guy called Simon O'Leary, but he pulled all 4 of us together in the spring, and basically we worked collaboratively on a range of products and initiatives to actually pull this whole campaign together. So I was trying to come up with a pictorial presentation of 2020. You know, wheels off the bus, car crash, all these adjectives are very apt. And I walked into the spring of 2020 just wondering how on earth we were going to manage and cope and deal with the Poppy Appeal in 2020. There were and still are a number of core challenges for us in the Poppy Appeal. Every year we try and raise about £50 million. Our volunteers who actually run the appeal for us are generally elderly. Obviously they say many of them chose not to assist us this year because they were self-isolating. We had to sort out our distribution, face-to-face, obviously because of lockdown, that was a huge issue, and we weren't sure in the spring exactly what November was going to be looking like. There are local lockdowns up and down the country, and the prevalence of cash was diminishing in society. And when you have a campaign that generates £50 million, generally in coinage, that is a slight issue, as they say. So a number of challenges that we faced. So basically what we did is we developed, under Simon's guidance, we developed a program board to oversee this program. And basically we all got together, and just as Alex talked about collaboration, coming together in the times of need, we very much did this. And so everybody got together around the virtual table on a weekly session just to discuss how exactly we're going to manage this appeal this year. And altogether, so we came up with a large range of initiatives, trying to get it us in as good a place as we could be. So tactically, what did that mean? Basically, a lot of stuff needed to be sorted out, and a large number of areas. So we actually had a program manager who brought all these together. So the core of the Poppy Appeal is community fundraising, and it's our fantastic volunteers, over 100,000 people who come together every year and sell poppies and generate money on our behalf. Without them, we couldn't do what we do. But we were assuming, rightly in the end, that activity was going to be severely affected, which it was. Our marketing team did a fantastic job. We're pulling together all our assets, PR, website, brand TV, plus more to pull the campaign together. We had our business as usual activity, which included our poppy shop, paid for advertising, and we also introduced QR codes for our community fundraisers, but also we put those on posters at our supermarket partners. We also developed a range of new initiatives. One of these was Poppies in the Post, where we gave poppies away free to people that raised their hands, and then we asked them to go and sell those to their friends and relatives and then pay the money back to us. We had a downloadable poppy, which I'll show you in a second. So we're just asking people to download it, and then there are two versions, a full colour one or a kind of an outline one that people can actually colour in and then stick in their front windows. And we also got the brand TV campaign and converted it into a DRTV campaign and ran a campaign there as well. We were given some free radio space too, so that factored into the mix too. We work very closely with our core corporate partners, Sainsbury's, Tesco. We've had a long-standing relationship with M&S as well, and again, a number of other retailers too. And within our mass events team, they really galvanized themselves and had had two core online initiatives, a poppy run. So in the spring, it was meant to be a real world poppy run, but basically we ended up cancelling that basically because of lockdown, and it was a DIY poppy run. And then we produced a range of fundraising initiatives in a free fundraising pack, asking people to do their own thing as well. And again, that did very, very well for us too. This is the downloadable poster, so free of charge, and a number of people downloaded that and then kind of put that in their front windows. I was trying to come up with a pictorial representation of what the poppy appeal looks like with everything going on. I couldn't really come up with anything, so I just came up with this picture from D-Day. I think this is D-Day plus 3 or 4, where literally tens of thousands of people, of soldiers, of Navy personnel, and the RAF up in the sky there somewhere, all converging on one area, a very short, a very small patch of land in a very short period of time, because the poppy appeal is only a maximum of 3 weeks long. And there's just so much activity going on there. And then today, I'm not even going to talk about direct marketing because that also goes on, but I kind of covered that off last time, but that also was going on too. So I don't know how many projects we had, but we probably had 30 or 40 different projects ongoing at the same time during that 3-week period, just trying to maximize every possible opportunity that we had. And then halfway during the appeal, we had the announcement. Our friend Boris obviously made the right decision to lock the country down again. So literally that's a week before the poppy appeal was due to end. And basically what that did mean was that these people, our fantastic volunteers, some of a number of whom were out there doing their thing, selling their poppies where they could, where they were allowed. We basically had to ask those guys to stop doing that because it just did not tie in with the lockdown. So basically that ceased that area of the campaign. So what does this mean? What are the core results? How have we ended up? The actual core poppy appeal, the money from our volunteers, that is still coming in. So I can't give you a figure for that. That's literally still being collated and counted. But we have had some major successes. Our poppy shop income was double that which we were expecting. And again, that's because all of our activity pushed people towards our website. And then people then were able to self-select where they wanted to go within our website, whether it's to go on the shop or just make a donation, do a run, do poppies in the post, or any one of a large number of initiatives that they could undertake. So the shop did really well. We also sold poppies and wreaths and crosses and other items on the poppy shop that usually we would only distribute via our poppy sellers. So I think that generated about £2 or £3 million worth of that £7 million worth of income. So that is new income for us. Our online income went absolutely crazy. Last year we did about 600K October to November. This year we did £6 million. Yeah, and £1 million of that was on Remembrance Sunday. We didn't really push any fundraising activity on that particular day, but people just took it upon themselves to be incredibly generous and to hand money over to us. Being slightly geeky, we did look at the prompting levels on our website and reduce those down. They were fairly high previously. We reduced those down, and that resulted in our conversion rates increasing, the number of gifts increasing. Sadly, the average gift went down, but you know, you can't have everything, I guess. But we still got an awful large amount of supporters coming from there. We tested DRTV. That had a really good ROI for us. We just needed to make sure we got the right sweet spot in November. We did go a little bit early. The results weren't quite so good. We then went back in again in November, and we did really, really well. Our mass events activity was fantastic. Our poppy runs and our fundraising activity, that's generated in excess of £500,000, and that money is still coming in. Poppies in the Post, I think that's done £250,000, and the money's still coming in. And yeah, people downloaded the poppy. Over 280,000 people downloaded it. So we've had some really, really good successes from that activity. So key takeouts: COVID-19 not good for the poppy appeal. Nothing really can replace a veteran standing outside Sainsbury's wearing his or her medals, actually collecting money for us. Nothing can replace that. So our income will be down in that area. But we have had some successes. DRTV has been good for us. Online, really exceeded expectations, and the mass events have done really, really well for us as well. So 2021, what's the predictions? Well, I'm afraid I can't predict what's going to happen. It's kind of looking like the same as 2020 really at the moment, isn't it? As we will be moving into 2021 in lockdown. But hopefully the poppy appeal in 2021 will be somewhat different to 2020. It's also our 100th anniversary too, so I'm sure that will make a difference. That's pretty much it from me, so I'll hand back over to Helen. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Guy. It's really interesting to see how the performance of the poppy appeal went this year. I mean, I have a question for you now, actually. What of the things that you've introduced this year do you think you'll take forward into next year as well, assuming things, we can get the people, the veterans back selling poppies and things can go back to normal? Will you revert back to how things were previously, or will you integrate the two approaches?
That's a really good point. I mean, in theory, I don't know, because we've not made that decision yet. Personally, I think pretty much everything that we would do, that we have done this year, we would do again next year. Obviously, there may well be some nips and tucks and some small improvements there. If it generates an effective ROI for us, then I would hope and expect we would do it again. So it may be that the ratio changes, whether by maybe we get 20% of our income during that time from these contingency activities, as we call them, and 80% from the core poppy appeal. So that could be the profile of our income moving forwards. In 2019, it was 100% and pretty much zero. So maybe be 80-20 next year. So that would be my personal ambition. But again, we just need to we need to crunch the numbers when we have them and work that through.
No, it's really interesting how the pandemic, with all its challenges, has really accelerated the pace of change in the kinds of activities that we're doing, and it's great to see the results that you have got so far. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. We really appreciate your time to do that. Got one final poll to share with everyone, which is, in which channel do you expect most investment in individual giving in 2021? So lots of different channels here. Apologies if we've left any out. But direct mail warm, direct mail, so cold door drops, partially addressed mail, social media, Google ads, email, DRTV, telemarketing, face-to-face, outdoor media, or something else. So any other channels that you can think of. Where do you think most investment will come in individual giving for 2021? I'll just give you a couple of seconds to cast your votes there. Those options again: direct mail warm, direct mail cold, door drops or partially addressed mail, social media, Google Ads, email, DRTV, telemarketing, face-to-face, outdoor media, or other. Another 10 seconds. Okay, I'm going to end the polling there, and remember to share the results so that people can see. So 32% of those people that voted would expect most investment in warm direct mail in 2021. Let's have a look at see where some of the others are coming in, because I don't think that was against expectation. What's interesting here is that social media and DRTV are the second highest expectations of investment for 2021. 24% social media and 20% in DRTV. So that's really interesting to see those two channels coming further to the fore, with face-to-face dropping behind, obviously, because we don't know what's going to be happening with restrictions around social distancing. Telemarketing at 2%, email 5%, Google Ads 2%, and direct mail, so cold, door drops, partially addressed mail at 12%. So looking at ways that you might be able to acquire new supporters along those channels. And really interesting results there. Thank you for casting your votes. We're going to come into our Q&A section now. We do have some questions that have come in. So if we start, Josh asked a question whilst Helen was presenting the results. And the question there is, Helen, during 2020, have you seen the size of charity fundraising campaigns by spend or volume decrease compared to 2019? So have you seen the size of charity fundraising campaigns decrease compared to 2019?
As in volume of, I guess, mailings size, I think probably is what you mean. Answer is actually it's quite varied. Some, because I think probably they tried a campaign, either emergency appeal or an early campaign earlier on in the pandemic, worked so well. I've seen the volumes go up actually for Christmas in the latter end. So I think people are kind of going, gosh, this works, and we're trying to offset losses elsewhere or put more into this pot. So I think they've actually grown. For some that were more nervous, I've seen it shrink. So they've kind of just battened down the hatches and gone to core responsive segments to just protect, I guess, that activity. So it's sort of almost gone like that. Some have gone much bigger, some have gone much smaller as a general trend that I've seen. And income obviously will then kind of go off the back of that accordingly. But response rates and average gifts are higher. So income across the board really is strong.
Thanks, Helen. Another question here from Jania. What are your top tips for driving online conversion? Your digital results for the Poppy Appeal are outstanding. I think this one must be for you, Guy. So what are your top tips for driving online conversion? But Alex, if you've got something to add as well, please do chip in there. Top tips for driving online conversion.
Yeah, I mean, we are very, very lucky at the Legion. We get an awful lot of PR coverage. Our PR team do a fantastic job. So they push people towards our website. Our TVE brand ad pushed people towards the website too, as did the DRTV ads as well. So there was an awful lot of media out there in our favour, actually just pushing people towards a generic landing page, and then people were able to self-select. So I guess we are very, very lucky in that respect. I mean, my colleagues in Poppy Scotland, they had the same ratio of uptake as well. So I think, and also we did actually spend the maximum amount that we could on digital paid for ads, whether it's social, paid, or sponsored search, etc. So we just kind of maxed out that whole area too. So yeah, some of it is in our control, like paid for advertising. Others is in the hands of others, and it's yeah, we are lucky to receive it, such as the PR, simply because of our brand and because it's November.
Thank you. Alex, do you have anything to add in terms of driving online conversion?
Yeah, so just being really frank, I think for us, our conversion rates are not maybe what we'd like them to be. I think it's an area we need to improve. But to build on Guy's point, I think where it has worked and what has been successful is two things. One, making sure you've got that really good balance, whether it's paid for or earned, but making sure all channels that you can possibly leverage are pointing in the same direction at the same time with the same kind of message, so that cohesion, so you're giving every single opportunity. And when people get to that donation page, the experience, the story is consistent with what they're seeing elsewhere. And we certainly found that, you know, for the first time, we started to really drive traffic from our shop, which is an income generating in its own right, but it's commercial income, but making sure that there was a message about our urgent appeal on the shop. And lo and behold, when you click through, the message you got on the landing page for the donation was the same message. So it's just making sure that there's a real continuity. But you know, again, our conversion isn't something I think that sets us above others. I don't think I'm well placed to be expert on this, but certainly making sure all messages align as best possible to give it the maximum amount of exposure will be my advice.
Thank you very much for that. It's, yeah, that consistency piece really coming through there. I think we've had some good themes come through from the webinar today. We're unfortunately out of time. We've got a few more questions that people have asked, and we'll try and get some answers through, and I'll email out to everyone that's registered to be part of the webinar and see whether we can get some answers through to you for those. So just leaves me to say thank you very much to Helen, Alex and Guy for joining us today and sharing their results and experiences with us. Hope you found it interesting. Just to let you know that the webinar will be available on demand through our YouTube and Vimeo, the Woods Vale Data YouTube and Vimeo sites. It will also be available to download from our website, and I'll email a link out to everybody for that. We'll be looking at doing an updated result, as Helen said, an updated report, as Helen said, towards the end of January, February, looking at the results of Christmas so that we can see the full extent of 2020. The reports are compiled by our data strategy and insight team at Woods Vale Data. If you'd like to talk to us about how that team can help you with your fundraising programs through data analysis and insight, do get in touch with us. And finally, a plea really, we will be hosting a webinar on prize-led fundraising, so that's raffles and weekly lotteries, in Q1 next year. And we're looking for people to share their raffle and weekly lottery stories with us, so that we can share those as part of the report and webinar. So if anyone is interested, please do email me. That's helen.hallahan@woodsvaledata.co.uk. We'd love to compile a group of stories from people about how they approach their prize-led fundraising. So we're really interested to hear from everyone here too. So thank you very much for attending and watching this webinar. And from all of us, a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Thank you.